So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the hands-on workshop of the SageMaker notebook solution for cross-account QuickSight deployment. I'm May, and along with Ying, will be leading today's session. So to get started, I just wanted to give a quick overview and agenda of what we will be doing today. If you remember from the last session, Ying talked about how BI Ops can help your Amazon QuickSight team automate asset migration and version control. So today we will go over one of the suggested solution, which uses Python scripts that can do batch deployment, which is deploying all assets from the source account to the target account, or on-demand incremental deployment, which is deploying specific assets across accounts. So if we take a look at the agenda, we will be first creating a SageMaker notebook instance to be able to run our Python Jupyter notebooks. Then we will create two roles, one in our source account and one in our target account that the Jupyter notebook can assume to run QuickSight API calls. Then we will create a model dataset in Athena, create a model dashboard based on the Athena table, and lastly, run our Python scripts to deploy this dashboard into the target account. So if that looks good to everyone, let's get started then. So if everyone can go into their Isengard. I've sent the workshop link also in the chat, and there you can find written instructions and the code snippets that we'll be needing to copy and paste later on. But the first thing we want to do is to make sure that we have two accounts, one to be our source and one that is going to be our target account. So for me, I will be using this account here as my source and this bottom account here as my target. If you don't already have two accounts you can use, you can go ahead and create one on the left-hand side here, or you can just use the same account to act as both your source and your target. So I'll give everyone a moment to figure out which accounts they will be using.
Sorry, our friends. What May is showing is Isengard, which is AWS internally. I know you might not have the access, so you might want to create a two AWS account from the AWS console. If you don't have two accounts, but you only have one account, that's also okay. You just use the same account to be both source account and target account. The procedure is the same. Just later, you might want to test the cross-account configuration once you have two accounts set up.
Yep. Just give everyone a moment. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go into my source account. So if you can just access the AWS Management Console. And we will go ahead and head over to Amazon SageMaker. So SageMaker provides hosted Jupyter notebooks that require no setup, so you can begin running your code immediately. We will head over to this left side under Notebook and Notebook Instance. Once here on the right-hand side, we want to create a notebook instance. And we can go ahead and give our notebook instance a name. I'm going to call mine BI Ops. And we can keep the rest of the configurations default, except for under permissions and encryption over here. We want to create a new execution role and just give it access to all of the S3 buckets for now. This execution role will basically allow the notebook to run operations on your behalf. And we want to, after you get the success message, we want to press on this link right under it, the execution role, to open up a new tab. From here, we see that it already have 2 permission policies attached, but we also want to give it administrator privileges. So on this right-hand side, under Add Permissions, we're going to attach a policy. And in the search bar, you can just go ahead and search up admin, and there should be a administrator access. For now, we're just going to give it full administrator access, but in the future, if you want to give it lesser privileges, that is okay as well. Go ahead and attach this policy. And now you should have 3 policies for this role. I'll pause here and let everyone catch up. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat. Cool. So once this is finished, we will go ahead and create a role that this execution role can assume to make any QuickSight API calls. So we will go over again, press on roles, and we will create a new role. And for this one, we will press custom trust policy because we just want our execution role to be able to assume this role. And under principal, we're going to go to the workshop link that was sent. And if you go scroll a little bit down, there's this one line that has AWS and then the ARN. Go ahead on this right side, there's a copy button. Go ahead and copy that and come back to your management console and just go ahead and paste it between the brackets next to principal. And we can go ahead and change this your account ID to the account ID of the account you're using. So go ahead and copy this. You can also get it from up on the right-hand side under account ID. And go ahead and paste that. As well as at the end of this string, we see your execution role ID. We will go ahead and replace this with this execution role string of numbers at the end. You can open it again and copy it. You just find it here. Go ahead and copy these last few digits and paste that there. Give everyone a second to do that. And now we can go ahead and press next. We will attach a permission later, so we can press next again. And for the role name, we want to title it QS-admin-source. So we know that this is the role in the source account. And then everything looks good. You can go ahead and create the role. Now, if you go back into the search bar, you should be able to find the new role that you just created. You can go ahead and open that up. And we will be, right now it does not have any permissions attached to it. We're gonna attach a permission. So this time, instead of attaching a policy, we're going to create our own inline policy. So go ahead and create that inline policy. And under JSON, we can go back to our workshop. And after number 7 on the workshop, we see this large chunk of JSON code. We can go ahead, copy that, and just Control All and paste that. So now we are giving it permissions to do operations. Go ahead, review that policy, give it a name. I'm going to call it QS admin and create. So now under permissions, you should be able to see the newly created permission policy. Give everyone a second.
And May is doing here for everyone information is to let the SageMaker notebook instance to be able to do the QuickSight administrator actions in the source account. In the one you have your QuickSight assets and you would like to deploy into the other account. So you just think about SageMaker like a person, like a user. And we would like to let the SageMaker instance to be able to do all the operations by defining by this policy, just for information.
Yep, it's like acting like an agent. Cool, now you can go ahead and close this tab. Go ahead and close the SageMaker execution rule tab. And before closing this tab of the SageMaker notebook instance while we were creating it, you can just go ahead and create the notebook instance at the bottom. It'll take some time to spin up, so yep, it's in a, you should see a pending status. So while that's creating, we can go ahead and also set up the correct configurations in our target account. So if you can log into your target account now and access the AWS Management Console. Here again, we're going to do something similar to as we did in the source account to create the role so that the source account can connect to the target account. So we can go to IAM. And under roles on the left-hand side, I'm going to create a role. However, instead of a custom trust policy of letting the SageMaker access it, we're going to choose another AWS account. And for this one, we're going to choose another AWS account. And for the account ID, again, you can go back and copy the ID of your source account and paste it in this box. Give everyone a second to find that. Cool, and then we'll go ahead and just create it. Again, we'll add the permissions afterwards and title this role QS-admin-target. Everything looks good. Create the role. Again, search up the role and under permissions, add permission, create inline policy. And then again, if you go back into our workshop, under Create Resources and Target Account, we should be able to copy this JSON, head back into the policy, and paste it.
For the attendee who only have one account, don't worry about that. You can, once you have two AWS accounts set up, you can just repeat the procedure here. This video we will post in QuickSight YouTube channel. You can always go back to check it. For now, you can just do the practice in just one QuickSight account to learn from it. Thank you.
Yep. And then once that's done, review the policy, give it a name, a title, QS admin again, and create this policy. Cool. Now we see that this QS admin target has one policy, QS admin. Does anyone have any questions? Great. Now we're going to go ahead and close our target account tab. And again, go back to our source account. Now that we have both our roles created for this workshop, we will create a model Athena table to use in our dashboard if you already don't have one to use. If you already have Athena table to use, that's great. You can just skip this step. And also, if you never used Amazon Athena before, it is an interactive query service that makes it easy to analyze data in Amazon S3 using standard SQL. So because it uses S3, we can go ahead and add our data into S3 first, and it will directly query from that bucket. So go ahead, head over to S3, and let me go ahead and drop the CSV file we'll be using into chat. There you go. You guys can go ahead and download that. And we're going to create a bucket just for this workshop. I'm going to name it BI Ops. And we can leave the rest of the configurations as default and go ahead and create this bucket. Oh, let's be lowercase. Lowercase. There we go. Once that bucket is created, you can go into it and upload the file that was just dropped into chat, the test dataset file. And click upload. Cool. Now we should see the CSV file under this bucket. And I'll give everyone a moment to get that set up. And now we will head over to Athena. Go ahead and open that and select Query Editor on the left-hand side. For data source, I'm just using AWS Data Catalog, and for the database, I'm just choosing the default one. And then I will drop the template into the chat. So this is to the SQL to create the table in Athena. So if you open that up, you should see this template, and starting from create external table all the way to the end. Go ahead and copy that.
May we lost your screen share.
What happened?
Yeah,
There we go. Apologies.
no worry.
Can you see
Sometimes
it now?
Chinese bug, a lot of bug.
Yeah. So back in the Word document, just select everything from the create external table to the end, this chunk of code. Go ahead and paste that into the query editor. If your bucket, S3 bucket you created was named differently than what I named it, BIOps, under location, you can change it to your S3 bucket. Aside that from that, you can leave everything as is, and this orange run button, just go ahead and run that. And we see that the test dataset is created under tables. I'll pause there for everyone to catch up.
And for everyone, those steps we are running here is for you to have a thinner data sets to be able to deploy across different environment. If you already have a data set ready, you don't have to do this. Just for information.
Yeah, today we're demoing a solution based on Athena dataset. It also works for Redshift and RDS. Cool, now we get to do the fun part. From your source account, log into your QuickSight, head over to QuickSight. And one configuration to make sure you have is that you're giving QuickSight access to the S3 bucket you just created. In the top right corner, under this little person icon, press it and click Manage QuickSight. Then under the left hand side, go to Security and Permissions. Here, we're going to, under QuickSight Access to AWS Services, we're going to press Manage. And just make sure that Amazon S3 is checked. And under Select S3 Buckets, you can either just select the S3 bucket you just created. For me, I just press Select All, make sure everything is checked, and finish. And also make sure that you are giving the Amazon Athena access, so that bucket, that checkbox is also checked. Once that's good, just save and press this QuickSight button on the top left. Now we are going to create the data set that will be used in our dashboard. So go ahead, press Datasets, New Dataset, and Athena. For the data source name, I'm going to title it test underscore data source. Feel free to title it whatever makes sense to you. And the primary will be my Athena work group, and we can create the data source. I use AWS Data Catalog and I use the default database. So I'm going to select that and then pick out this test data set we just created. Go ahead and select that, and I'm going to create analysis, so visualize. And you can do whatever you want. I'm just going to add all of the fields. Make it into a table. There, we can see all our data. And just go ahead and on this right side, top right side, share, publish dashboard. I'll title it test underscore dashboard. Publish it. So now we have our test dashboard. I'll give everyone a second to create that. Cool. So now if we go back to the workshop page, we can head over to implement the solution. And here, under number 1, there should be a GitHub repository link. Everyone should be able to access it. Let me know if you can't. And from here, we see this green code button. We're going to press it and download the zip. So this file will contain all of the Python scripts we'll be using in SageMaker to run the deployment. Okay, and then we can go ahead and unzip it. And we'll come back to this in 1 second. And go ahead and close your source account QuickSight and head back into SageMaker in your source account. Our notebook should have finished spinning up, so we're going ahead and open that up. SageMaker. Notebook instance. And on these under actions, we are going to open Jupyter Lab, the right option. It should take you to, takes a moment to load. Should take you to the screen. And back in your unzipped file, can go into it. And today we're going to go to the folder BI Ops deployment scripts, and then Jupyter Notebook. We're going to be dragging and dropping batch deployment, incremental deployment, and functions. And you can just go ahead and drag and drop it to this left-hand side here in this blank space. And it'll automatically add in the files for you. So today we were going to show the incremental deployment solution, which is specifying which assets we want to deploy into the target account. If you wanted to deploy all assets from your source account to the target account, you can just do a batch deployment, which you don't need to specify which asset. So we can open incremental deployment, and I'll ask you to select a kernel. This notebook is written in Python. So if you select Python 3, yep, that should work. Also, just as a note, the order the cells are run in this notebook does matter, especially when we run our deployment steps, as we want to make sure things like the data source and data set are already deployed before we deploy the related dashboard. And just an overview of how this notebook works, you can press a cell, and on this top hand side, there's this play button, and it will run that cell. So we can go ahead and run this first cell. This will install the packages that we need. And if you look at the top next to Jupyter Labs, if you see this icon, it means that it's still currently running. So we'll give that a moment to run. And now we can go ahead and run this second cell, which also imports some of the packages we'll be using. And this third cell, which will import the functions from the functions notebook into this notebook. And once those three are done, we can skip running the static profile, as in this solution today, we are using this assume role solution. But if you want to choose so in the future, you can also configure the AWS profile from the terminal and use these lines of code.
The static profile is more tricky. You have to open the terminal inside the SageMaker notebook and then configure the profile similar like you configure in your local laptop. Yeah, so that one is one option, but we recommend you to use the assume role, which is a more dynamical way to pass the security credential information.
Yep. So under source account ID, you can go ahead and find your source account ID again, copy that, and paste it. Make sure it's in either single quotations or double quotations. And for the role, if you remember, we created it called QS admin source. Go ahead and put that in quotes, admin source. If your account is in a different account aside from US East one, you can go ahead and change this parameter. Otherwise, you just press the run button and it should connect. Yep, this is just a warning. Should be good. And same thing for the target account. You want to put our target account ID. The role name created was QS admin target. And you change the region to the region you are using and go ahead and run this cell. I'll give everyone a second to do that.
Yeah, and after you finish this one, you will have two variable. One is called source session, another one is called target session. And the source session you can use to do any QuickSight related operation in your source account. And the target session is to support you to do any QuickSight related operation in your target account, just for information.
Yeah, let me know if anyone has trouble with this. Well, now we want to get the user ARN and credentials for your source and target session. So under source admin, you can go ahead and change this to your user, and you can find that in your source account under federated user, under account ID. You can copy and paste that. Just as a warning, it is case sensitive. So for my account, in my source account, the admin is the A is capitalized, but in my target account, it is lowercase. Go ahead and replace both of those. And then run this up.
And again, if you remember in the first session, we mentioned about the security configuration and the CI/CD pipeline. In this workshop, we only cover the CI/CD, I mean the deployment. We don't include the security. The security will be in the third part about the granular access control. So in here, we set up the target admin to be the owner of all the assets you deploy from source account to target account. We will set one single owner. For the user management and the access permission arrangement, that we will cover in the third part, which will come in the middle of May.
Yeah, so once that's good, since we're using Athena today, we don't need to add any of these parameters, but we can just go ahead and just run this cell for now. So in the case that you wanted to use RDS or Redshift, you would put your configurations here. So now we go to the deployment list, and here is where we will insert what assets we want to deploy. So this parameter is telling you that we just only want to deploy dashboards, but if you change this to all, it will deploy all the data sources, data sets, theme, analysis, dashboards that you put down here in the list. And similarly, if you put something like analysis, it'll only go through the analysis deploy list and deploy anything there. So we'll leave ours as dashboard, and just to make it simple, we can delete everything else. And we don't need to migrate the data source and data set separately. If we just put our dashboard name here, the code will automatically first deploy the data sets and data sources related to that dashboard. So ours was called test dashboard.
And you may notice it in here, in the code, in this framework. We are using dashboard name to get the dashboard deployment list. If you want to change the logical by using the dashboard ID, that's also doable. Just modify the function in the function notebook, then you can do whatever modification you would like to do.
Yeah, I ran into an issue the other day where I had two of the dashboards that were named the same, and that was causing some errors. It wasn't getting the right ID. So just be careful of that. So go ahead and run this. And this block of code will get the related data sources and data sets related to this dashboard. And so we run this, and we see the test dashboard. And then we see our data source, test data source, and test data set. So these are the three assets we will be deploying into our target account. And again, just to make it more clear, you can run these next few cells, and it'll again list out what assets will be deployed. And just to make everything more clear, if we run this results output location, it'll create a folder called deployment results on the left-hand side here. And if you double click this, you see a success and a fail folder. And later on, when we run the deployment of each asset, it'll log it into one of these folders and let you know that if it was successful or not. And then you mentioned that we can connect this to the admin console. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, for this one, we output the deployment information into the deployment results folder. And we have one folder to host the successful information and another folder to host the failure information. When I designed those AWS QuickSight ProServe open source tool, I designed it as a overall architecture to host everything. If you were in the session of admin console, you will know we have a solution to view the performance metric, the usage metric, and assess information like a data catalog of the QuickSight assets. You can see everything in a centralized dashboard to view all the information related to QuickSight. And at the same time, for this deployment solution, we output the deployment results into those folders. So you can similarly create data set based on those results and then visualize those deployment information in your admin console dashboard solution. So that's architecture. Every component relate to each other. This one is one of the backend component, and CloudTrail log is another backend component. The admin console is the front end solution for all those backend architecture, just for information.
Yeah, so just to recap, we have our three assets we want to deploy, and now we will deploy them one by one, first being the data source. So this first cell will get the information of our test data source. And then we don't want to redeploy the asset if it's already in the target account. So first we want to get all of the data sources in the target account, and then we want to check that if our data source that we're trying to deploy exists. And if it doesn't, we will deploy it. So this will give you a list of all of your data sources in the target. And now this cell under create data sources and target account will check that it's not in already deployed. And if it's not, it should create that data source. Yep, so this is the data source ID that's being created in the target account. And we can write our deployment results into one of our folders. And hopefully, if you go into successful and data source and open up this, we can see that it is indeed created successfully. And this data sources target session line of code just now again lists the data source of the target session, and you should be able to find your data source in there. Here, ours is right here. Test data source. I'll give everyone a second.
Everyone's good? No issue?
Okay,
Feel free,
then let's continue.
yeah,
Yeah.
feel free to let us know if you see any error. Don't worry about that. You can share your screen and then we can support you to debug it. That's why we design this hands-on workshop instead of a presentation.
Yep. So if you scroll down to the end of your data sources list that was just printed, there should be get data set list. So here we are going to do the same thing. We're going to get the data sets of our source session. So it would be test data set. Here we can see it, test data set. And again, we're going to get our already deployed list and then deploy our data set. And then this print fail information will log the results into the deployment results folder. Yep, and we can see this file called datasets. And again, test dataset, and it's under the successful folder, so therefore it was deployed successfully. So now we have our data source and our data set deployed. We can go ahead and deploy the dashboard. We can skip the get themes list since we're not deploying any themes. And also this get analysis section we can also skip. And here, there's a get dashboard list. Go ahead and run this cell to get our dashboard information and this chunk to deploy our dashboard. Usually takes a second to run.
May in left-hand side, you see a bunch of buttons.
Mhm.
And you can see there's a button, the one from bottom to up, the second one.
Mhm.
Yeah. So for everyone information, if you would like to quickly navigate to a specific cell, you can use this indexing icon to go to the cell you would like to do.
Cool. And lastly, we'll write our deployment results. Okay. Takes a refresh. Uh-oh. See. So it seems like it's not successful. It says it does exist. So maybe let's just go check. So once you're done and everything's ran, you can go back to the QuickSight of your source account. Oh, sorry, the QuickSight of your target account.
May you got error because you already have the dashboard there, so that's why you got the error. If you delete it and then run again, it should get the successful
I ran
message.
this one. I ran it again. I think. Let me check.
Yeah. You can go to the QuickSight. Yep. Yeah, you can delete this dashboard and then run it again, and then you should get a successful message. Yep.
Hmm, still says it's not.
Wait a minute. It is still running. Wait, just wait a minute. It
It
is
says it's
still
unsuccessful. I think it's not running. It says it's unsuccessful in the logs, but it does create the dashboard.
no, because you print the log earlier than the dashboard really finish the deployment.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I guess there's a little lag between the two.
No, when you run the
You have to
log,
wait this one. Hmm.
your kernel is still a full circle, so that's why that means it's still running it. So that's why
I see.
you see the information. Yeah.
Yep. But otherwise should be good. Again, I created the dashboard again after deleting it, and we do see it. And if you go under data set, you should be able to see your test data set that was also created. Yeah, I think that's all. Ying, do you have anything to add?
No, I think it's all good. Very good.
Does anyone have any questions?
It it amazed me. No one has question. No one has issue. Surprised me. It runs so smoothly. Everyone, feel free to ask any question, and also feel free to raise your request. Yeah, if you have any requirement to our product, I mean open source product, feel free to let us know. And if you would like me to go through the code, also let me know. I can go through the code. Anyone would like to understand deeply about the code? Oh my God, you are so quiet. I start wondering, is it the 28 attendee really here or just leave the login
Hey,
session here?
hey,
Yeah, hey.
this is Shonak. Sorry to
Hi.
interrupt you.
Sir.
Hi. So thank you for walking our partners through. So if they have any requirement in order to make any modifications, if you could, guide them through how they could, take a branch from this Git repository, um, I think that would be great.
Yeah, yeah. You can feel free to fork this GitHub. Do you mind to open the GitHub? Yeah. And you can see we have a lot of open source solution, and you can fork it and create your own branch and then do any modification you want to do. And you can submit your pull request. I will review it. And if I feel the code is interesting, is worthy to check into our main branch, I will merge your request. And stay tuned, we have a lot of new component in this GitHub repo. So feel free to discover it. And welcome to attend our next session. We will talk about the deployment solution, but another one by using a CDK solution. And the fancy thing is in the CDK solution, we provide a UI interface for you to do the deployment. So you can pick up which dashboard you want to deploy and then click a submit button. And then we will do the deployment for you by calling the backend workflow. So that will be next session. And after we finish the BI ops session, we will run also 3 sessions for the granular access control. That's for the security management. So stay tuned. And if you really don't have any questions, then we will give you 1 hour back and enjoy it.